A decade ago, in his role as the 26th Prime Minister of Australia, Kevin Rudd led his country through difficult times. The Great Recession that came in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis, mending relations with Indigenous peoples, a rising China, and tackling climate change. Today, he's still deeply engaged in many of these issues as president of the Asia Society Policy Institute. And Kevin Rudd joins us now for more on his country and its relations with the rest of the world. So good to meet you.
Good to be here.
Thank you for coming in. I know in the United States, when you're president, you're Mr. President for life. But in Canada, if you're no longer the Prime Minister, you're just Mr. Whoever. What is it in Australia?
G'day, you.
I'm not sure I can do that.
Much less polite than you guys.
Okay, I'm not sure I can say g'day, you,
but it's certainly not hello, good morning, Mr. Prime Minister.
Okay.
I now live in New York, which is where I run the Policy Institute. And so every morning I'm greeted as Prime Minister. It just drives me nuts because we just don't do that back home.
You don't do that. Okay. Well, we don't do that either. So that's another thing we all have in common. I hate like hell to do this, but I want to start with something that is just incredibly tragic and incredibly topical, namely the 50 people who were shot in the mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand, back in March. The killer was apparently born and raised in Australia, and I want to get your sense about whether the political climate in your country right now, whether you think that played any role in whatever insanity motivated him to do what he did.
I think it's more likely to be this global culture, what's called in the United States at least, the new alt-right culture, far-right culture, white supremacist culture. And frankly, this is an online ecosystem. You don't have to dig very far in the internet world to discover where these people hang out. And this guy, who shall remain nameless, because it's important to continue to deny him the satisfaction of having been the killer responsible for slaughtering so many innocent Muslims at prayer in Christchurch in New Zealand. Now, this guy was just part of that ecosystem. On the broader politics in Australia, I mean, my view is that you have, to some extent, from the political right in Australia, from time to time, a demonisation of refugees, asylum seekers, Muslims. But to say that that's uniquely Australian, I think, is wrong. Of course, my reaction as a former Australian Prime Minister when I hear that someone like this has been engaged in the slaughtering of the innocent, it makes me sick, absolutely sick.
No, it's not uniquely Australian. We've had our moments with it in Canada, at a mosque in Quebec a year or more ago. Obviously, it's all over the United States. The political party in Australia, One Nation, I think it's fair to say won its largest level of support at the federal level in the last election. Does their brand of white nationalism look any different from any other countries in the world at the moment?
No, it's basically of a type, and we see it in most of our Western democracies. One Nation's been around for about 20 years in Australia, and its voter support goes up and down and up and down. But it's a racist party. No two ways about it. It's a political party which loathes and detests me with a passion for everything I stand for in defence of multiculturalism, religious tolerance, and welcoming our Muslim brothers and sisters to our country, etc. But they're part of the Australian political landscape. They're not a major political party. They're a minor political party. We've got elections on at present, fingers crossed. They remain a very minor party in the future.
FDR used to say of his enemies, "I welcome their hate." Do you feel the same way about them?
Well, certainly in their attitude to me, I've always seen that as a validation of everything I believe in, which is of a tolerant, inclusive, multicultural Australia, and one which is at rest and calm with its future in the wider Asia-Pacific region, rather than some rump right-wing reactionary party playing to the politics of racial division.
Do you think you have to be a racist to vote for that party?
No, because they're quite seductive in the way in which they go about the politics of it. They themselves in their internal script are unabashedly racist. But no, they appeal to a group and a constituency, and you see that same appeal in elements of Trump's America as well. Canada, I can comment less cogently.
We'll know better about that in October when we have our next federal election. You wrote recently that you felt that your country could soon be on the verge of what you called a national decline. What did you mean by that?
Well, the bottom line is we in Australia need to be very mindful of the challenges of remaining a vibrant part of the emerging global economy, which will be driven by the high technologies of the future. And so for countries like Australia, which, as you know, is geographically relatively remote, being wired to the future drivers of global economic growth is critical. One of the things we've sought to do in Australia to redress that problem is build a high-speed national broadband network that's been interrupted by conservative politics in Australia and the influence of the Murdoch media. But the bottom line is we've sought to become connected. There is a good tech sector in Australia, like there is in Toronto, like there is in elsewhere in Canada. But unless we, frankly, work twice as hard as the big players, that's the Americans and now increasingly the Chinese, then there's a danger our countries get left behind.
How do you make sure that doesn't happen?
I think there's two things that belong to the policy toolkit for governments or like-minded governments around the world. One is to make sure that for the high-tech industries of the future, you have basic facilitating infrastructure, which is not just high-speed broadband, but also that you've got the best quality educational and medical research institutes that you can possibly have. We have those in Australia, you've got them in Canada, but putting them together in critical mass is important as well. And the other half of it is an active venture capital and broader capital markets industry, which takes innovation, brings it to market and takes it to the world. In our part of the world, a bit like Canada, where we've always had this strong, steady flow of growth from our mining and resources sector and our energy sector, sometimes it's taken away the sharpness of the competitive edge of what we need to deliver to the industries of the new economy of the future.
I want to call upon your expertise on China, being a China scholar, being a person who speaks fluent Mandarin, to ask you how you think the West ought to perceive China's global ambitions today.
I think we need to be balanced about it, to be quite honest. Xi Jinping's China is not the old China. It's quite different. Xi Jinping's pushing the margins. China is rising. World's second largest economy, in a decade's time, perhaps the largest, using market exchange rates as the measure. And so at one level, it's natural and normal for China not simply to passively be looking at the international order and saying, we'll simply accept that as it is, because we Chinese are returning to a place of historical greatness in the affairs of the world.
Which they have had more often than they have not.
Well, that's true. I mean, when China becomes once again the largest economy in the world, which I think is probable, it'll be the first time since George III was on the throne of England that we had a non-English speaking, non-Western, non-democratic state as the world's largest economy. So we're all in for a bit of a surprise. I think that's just an underlying reality. But on the other hand, for those of us like Canada, like Australia, we're liberal democracies. We stand for a set of values which are anchored in the conventions of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. We're going to have different views to the Chinese about our domestic political systems. We're also going to differ with the Chinese on the question of our alliance structure with the United States. Neither of those arrangements are ever going to change as far as Canada and Australia are concerned. But in dealing with our Chinese friends, we've got to be equally robust about those matters and not, as it were, shrink from it. But the balance lies in the fact that within those constraints, then we should be prosecuting the maximum mutually beneficial economic relationships possible.
Sure.
That's been our strategy in Australia. It's never a smooth trajectory. There's always huge bumps in the road in this. But I think if you navigate along those lines, you can manage a balanced relationship.
I take your point on that, but you're obviously a lot closer to them than we are. Do you see them as a national security threat?
In Australia, our view of China's rise is that if China continues to remain within the framework of the international rules-based system post-45, then China is not a threat. But it's an open question as to where the Chinese People's Liberation Army, the Navy, the Air Force, its maritime strategies in Southeast Asia take that country into the future. I think the jury, therefore, is out on that question. The danger is that we slide from where we currently are in US-China relations, for example, and a period of long-term strategic engagement between those two great and powerful countries, into a period of what the Americans now call strategic competition. And my concern for third countries like Canada and Australia is we then have to navigate an emerging new Cold War between China and the United States. That, for third countries, presents enormous dilemmas.
To meet that challenge, do you think we need to ramp up this organization they call CANZUK? Your country, my country, New Zealand, the United Kingdom. Are you behind that?
Well, I've always been behind the collaboration among the Five Eyes, including the Americans. And we're all allies of the United States. Even during the Americans' crazier moments, we're allies of the United States. And from time to time, we part company. I don't think Canada or my party, the Australian Labor Party, supported America's intervention in Vietnam. And certainly on the question of the Iraq War, my party, under, again, the Australian Labor Party, did not support that. But within those constraints of our ability to agree or disagree with the Americans, and maintaining a general alliance solidarity is important, both globally and regionally. And there's a reason for that. We've learned over 100 years to collaborate very closely. We trust each other. And I think you cannot automatically replicate that trust in the future. It's better to continue to deploy it in our collective interests.
So do we have, in your view, adequate shared values among those four countries I just mentioned, our Commonwealth heritage, to pursue something more robust on the international stage?
Well, it depends what you're talking about. I mean, we have this amorphous institution, otherwise called the Commonwealth, and I'm all for international cooperation through institutions of any form, whether it's the United Nations, the Commonwealth, or the International Folding Chair Society. These are all good things. But if the thrust of your question is on security collaboration, then these four countries, including the Americans, I think have a history of collaboration over the last 100 years, and it should provide a good basis for future cooperation as well.
Let's talk about reconciliation. One of the hallmarks of your time as Prime Minister was an apology to Australia's Aboriginal peoples. Your Canadian contemporary at the same time, Stephen Harper, did the same here in Canada. We then launched a Truth and Reconciliation Commission process, which I think by all accounts was an extremely valuable thing for us to have undertaken. What can you tell us from your experience about what it takes to make reconciliation real?
Two things, in my judgment. One is it's necessary for the formal institutions of the Parliament and the state to accept and articulate that we've wronged our Indigenous peoples. As you know, that's quite a hard threshold to cross for many white folks. But unless you do that, you can't get anywhere. I'd sort of describe that as sort of, as it were, permission to cross the bridge of reconciliation. It's a bridge, by the way, which our American cousins need to embrace themselves. For me, I find it puzzling that here we are in 2019, and there has been no national resolution of the United States Congress apologising to Native Americans or apologising to African Americans, given the appalling history of slavery. But in our case, such symbolic acts are only half the equation, but an important part. The other half is, let's call it practical reconciliation. So when I apologised to Indigenous Australians, we established a $5 billion program to close the gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians in health and education, but also in employment and in housing. And established a system whereby every Australian Prime Minister is required every 12 months on the anniversary of the apology to deliver a report on success and failure. So we've got, I would say, as much success as we have failure in the intervening 10 years since I delivered that apology, but it's better than where we were.
Have your successors adhered to that annual state of affairs?
They've certainly felt morally obliged to deliver reports with varying degrees of enthusiasm on the part of my Conservative successors. And certainly what the Conservatives done is seek to pull money out of these programs. And you can see the impact of that in some of the stalling performance against the closing the gap indicators. And we left clear numerical indicators of where we expect the gap to be closed. For example, in infant mortality, example in access to early childhood education, high school graduation, housing, employment, etc. But you know something? Numbers are important. If you can't count it, my experience in business has been, it usually doesn't happen. No, social justice needs to be counted as well.
Let me come a bit full circle with you here. The first thing you said to me was "G'day, mate," which of course is what we always expect Australians to say to us upon first contact. So I want to ask you a bit about this fabulous culture of yours. What is mateship?
What's mateship? Well, I think it's a term which first started to be used a lot in Australia in the First World War. As you know, Canadian troops, Australian troops, hundreds of thousands of them on the Western Front. So I think this brought together Australians from all classes. And as a result, mateship became consolidated as a part of the Australian national ethos. Mateship is not simply, as it were, synonymous with friendship, though it includes friendship. Mateship means I'll stick with you, and mateship also means that even when you screw up, I'll stick with you, but I'll probably also tell you that you've screwed up.
Well, in Canada, when somebody hands somebody a pitcher of beer, we swill it, or what's the word I'm looking for now? Chug it. Yeah, that's it. Chug-a-lug, that's it. You don't do that apparently in Australia. And I want to show you a clip of somebody I suspect you know well. This is one of your predecessors, Bob Hawke, who at 82 years old at a cricket match, someone handed him a beer. And here's what he did. Sheldon, please. That's not bad. I gather you guys call that sculling?
Sculling, yeah.
Sculling the beer when you chug a lug like that.
Yeah.
Is that
we also sing a little song which is called Down, 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 Down. Basically, it goes down.
Is that a prerequisite for office, being able to do that?
No, you see, I don't think I could do that. I don't mind a cold beer on a hot day, but Hawke is basically a record holder. Do you know he holds the Guinness Book of Records for downing a yard glass at Oxford when he was a Rhodes Scholar there in the 50s. And he still holds the record. It's quite extraordinary. But no, I would fail against those measures.
Some political observers, and you know, all these things are frivolous, except they actually in some cases have more significance than you think, that his ability to do that connects him to the average Australian in a way that helped result in political success for him. Do you buy that?
Yeah, I think Hawke was an enormously popular Australian politician. And his ability to down a beer on a cold day and a hot day was certainly part of how Australians warmed to him. But you know, all of us in the political process become knocked around the edges a bit by the hazards of political life. And that happened to Hawke as well.
Do you just finally want to hazard a guess as to how you think your next elections are going to turn out?
No, I won't, because I live in New York, and I've been there for the last 3 or 4 years running the Asia Policy Institute at the Asia Society. And the bottom line is you don't quite have the feel for what's going on locally when you're not there. But on the opinion polls, we, the Labor Party, have been ahead constantly in the polls for 2 years. On the law of probabilities, we should therefore prevail. But elections are funny things.
They are funny things, aren't they? Yes, they are. That is a great quote. Kevin Rudd, it's been awfully good of you to spend so much time with us here at TVO tonight. We thank you very much. You are the 26th Prime Minister of Australia and the President of the Asia Society Policy Institute. Good night, mate.
Good to be with you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.